Okay, picture this. It's September 1914. World War I is barely a month old, and honestly, it already looks like it's over. The German army seems totally unstoppable, and they're right on the verge of taking Paris. But then, something happens. Something so wild, so unexpected, it would go down in history as a miracle. So today, we're going to break down the First Battle of the Marne, the fight that saved France and really changed the entire world.
So let's set the scene. It's early September. The French and British armies? They're in a full-blown retreat. German soldiers are just 25 miles from the Eiffel Tower. I mean, they are so close they're convinced they'll be home by Christmas. The French government has already bailed on the capital. Defeat didn't just seem possible, it felt absolutely inevitable. So, how on earth did they manage to stop this juggernaut?
The French themselves have a name for it, the Miracle de la Marne. And you know what? It really did feel like one. You gotta understand, this wasn't just another battle. This was a complete 180-degree reversal of fortune that nobody saw coming, and it would set the course for the rest of World War I.
All right, so to really get how big of a miracle this was, you first have to understand the absolute disaster that came right before it. We're talking about the Great Retreat, a brutal, relentless chase where Allied forces were pushed back over 160 miles. The most terrible August in the history of the world. That's what people were calling it. The first month of the war was just one bloody, soul-crushing defeat after another for the Allies. The Germans had just ripped through Belgium and northern France with this terrifying efficiency. There was a young French lieutenant at the time, a guy named Charles de Gaulle, who wrote that all the courage in the world cannot prevail against gunfire. It really felt like pure guts were just no match for German firepower. And this wasn't just happening by chance. Oh no, this was all part of a super detailed German master plan. They had a strategy to win the whole war in a little over a month, way before Russia could even get its huge army ready to fight.
And this was it, the Schlieffen Plan. It was this incredibly bold all-or-nothing gamble. The whole idea was to throw this massive, sweeping right hook. So step 1, just plow through neutral Belgium to get around all of France's big forts. Step 2, swing way out and around Paris. And step 3, pin the entire French army against its own border and just crush it. Simple, right? Brutal. And, well, by early September, it was working perfectly.
But, and this is a huge but, that victory was taking a serious toll. The German soldiers were marching nearly 30 miles a day in the blazing summer heat. One person described them as looking like living scarecrows. They were literally outrunning their own food, their ammunition, their own bodies were giving out. The plan itself might have been brilliant, but the guys actually doing it, they were hitting a wall.
And this is where that perfect, unstoppable plan starts to show some cracks. It all comes down to one commander, one crucial decision, and one massive, unforeseen screw-up.
Okay, so this slide really breaks it down. You have the plan, and then you have what actually happened. General von Kluck, who was commanding the super important German First Army on the far right flank, was supposed to make that big sweeping move west of Paris. But he saw the French army retreating and he just couldn't resist the chance to go for the kill. So instead of sticking to the plan, he pivoted his whole army east of Paris, thinking he was about to land the final knockout blow.
And that one decision, boy, did it have a massive consequence. By turning in, Kluck left his entire flank wide open. I'm talking about a huge 50-kilometer, that's 31 miles gap between his army and the German Second Army. It was a colossal blunder, a wide-open door just begging to be kicked in. And you know who saw it? Allied pilots in their little reconnaissance planes.
The French commander-in-chief, a man named Joseph Joffre, had been playing the long game, just waiting for a mistake like this. For weeks, he'd been retreating, taking punch after punch, but he was also quietly shifting his forces around. The second he saw that gap, he knew. This was the moment. The Great Retreat was over. It was time to turn around and hit back. Hard.
And check this out. This is something a lot of people don't realize. By the time the battle started, the supposedly defeated Allies actually outnumbered the Germans on the field. While the Germans were totally gassed and stretched in, Joffre had been masterfully using France's railways to shuttle in reinforcements, even creating whole new armies to defend Paris. The tables had quietly turned.
All right, now we get to one of the most famous, almost legendary stories of the entire war. As the battle is just kicking off, the military governor of Paris, Joseph Glanier, realized he needed to get more troops to the front lines, like right now. So he looks out at the streets of Paris, and he requisitions 600 of the city's taxi cabs And those 600 taxis? They shuttled 6,000 fresh soldiers straight to the fight. Now, were those 6,000 soldiers a military game changer on their own? Maybe not. But the psychological impact? Oh, it was huge. It became this incredible symbol of total national resistance that every single part of France, right down to its taxi drivers, was getting thrown into this fight. And just like that, the legend of the taxis of the Marne was born.
But Joffre needed one more piece of the puzzle to fall into place: the British. Their commander, Sir John French, was really reluctant to throw his exhausted troops back into the fight. So Joffre goes to meet him in person, and in this super dramatic moment, he supposedly slams his fist on the table and declares, "The honor of England is at stake." And you know what? It worked. The British agreed to march right into that gap. And just like that, with the French 6th Army hammering Kluck's flank and the British and French 5th Army pouring into that gap, the whole German front started to crumble. Meanwhile, back at German High Command, miles away in Luxembourg, total chaos and panic started to set in.
This quote, supposedly what the German chief of staff said to the Kaiser, just perfectly sums up the shock and the despair. Now, we're not 100% sure if he actually said those exact words, but you know what? It doesn't really matter. It captures the stunning reality that their perfect plan, their dream of a quick 40-day victory, had completely imploded in just a few days.
And man, when the collapse came, it came fast. On September 9th, with their armies about to be surrounded, the order came down for the 1st and 2nd Armies to fall back. Just 2 days later, it was a general retreat across the entire front. By the 14th, the German army was pushed back 40 miles, and that's where they finally started to dig in. And that right there, that was the end of the War of Movement.
But this miracle, it came at an absolutely horrifying cost. In about a week of fighting, the combined casualties were over 500,000 men. Let that sink in. No other battle in the entire war would average that many casualties per day. It was a victory, for sure, but a mind-bogglingly bloody one.
So, why? How did the Germans lose? You know, maybe the best explanation comes from General von Kluck himself, the guy who made that fateful turn. He basically said the one thing the German war machine never planned for, the one thing they never even considered, was the sheer, unbelievable resilience of the French soldier. That these guys could get beaten back for 10 straight days and then just turn around and attack.
But here's the thing. The Marne didn't actually end the war. Not even close. Instead, it created what we now know as the Western Front. After the retreat, both sides kept trying to outflank each other in this race to the sea. But once they hit the coastline, there was nowhere else to go. So they did the only thing they could do. They dug in, and the world settled in for 4 long years of mud, blood, and stalemate.
And all of this leaves us with a really tough, kind of haunting question. The Marne was an incomplete victory. Yeah, it saved Paris and stopped a quick German win, but it also locked Europe into the most brutal war in human history up to that point. So think about it. Did the miracle on the Marne save France, only to doom an entire generation to the hell of the trenches? It's a question historians are still wrestling with.